All right, welcome back to the podcast. It's wine 30 tonight. Don't have any beer here, but so the topic of this podcast is what's worth upgrading on your old boat and what's just a waste of money. First off, before we get on what I think you should upgrade, if you can buy a boat that's already got the things done, you're better off doing that. If you're going to buy all the stuff to upgrade on your boat, especially if you have to pay somebody to do that, then you're going to end up spending more money. Because if you buy things, say it's already got updated navigation equipment, well, whoever bought that navigation equipment and installed it, number one, they paid for the install, and then they're taking the depreciation hit on it too. So if you can get it already done, say the boat would need $20,000 worth of upgrades, or you can spend an extra 10 grand and buy the boat already done, buy the boat that's already done. It's going to save you time and money and frustration. But say you've already got a boat and you want to work on it, what, in my opinion, are some of the better things you can do to make a difference in your quality of cruising and your lifestyle. I've owned quite a few boats over the years, none of them newer than about 20 years old. The most newest boat I've ever owned was like a 2001. I owned a couple 2001s. I owned a 1997. I currently own a 1989. And then I sailed a 1995 for about a year. I didn't own it, but I basically used it as my own boat. So I've got some older boats. So I've got some experience in upgrading and maintaining old boats. So, let's get it. So you got it. You got an old boat. What are the things that I'm going to break this down to sections, like worth it upgrades? You got to do it right away. Nice to haves, and then if you have the extra money, So we'll start off with the worth it, right? The things I think you should do right away. Number one would be your electrical system. It's just going to make your life so much easier if you're not having to worry about your batteries and how much power you have and your solar and all that. So when I'm talking about your electrical system, I'm talking about solar, lithium batteries, battery monitoring. So you need to have enough battery power, and that's why lithium has become a game changer these days, because it makes it so much easier, especially on these older, smaller boats. They just didn't have a whole lot of space for batteries. Now you can fit a lot more battery power in a smaller space with lithium. Of course, they're more expensive, but also you have more kilowatts, right? Amp hours, all that in a smaller space, plus you get to use more of it. So your traditional lead acid or even your AGM batteries, you can only use about 50% of the power available. So if you have 800 amp hours of battery, you should never use more than about 400 amp hours. Otherwise, you're going to damage those batteries. Whereas lithium, you can easily take them down to 20% without damaging the batteries. Some people say 10%. So if you have 800 amp hours, you can use over 600 amp hours of the same battery amperage, so that you can use more of the battery bank. So I would say you need to at least be able to go 24 hours on your battery power without having to charge your batteries either by solar or running a generator, something like that, so that if you have a day with not much sun or whatever, you're not sitting there having to run a generator all the time. So that the batteries would be number one, and then followed shortly thereafter at the same step, really, this would be A1, A2, or 1A, 1B, 1B, whatever, same thing, is solar. You want to have enough solar that it can charge your batteries from, say, 50% to 100% in one day, assuming you have good sun. So, that's what I would do. That's number one, is I would say solar, lithium, and battery monitoring. It'd be nice if you could have a battery monitor that you can log into it when you're not on the boat. So say you've left the boat on your mooring for a few days or something like that. You want to be able to monitor your boat, or you've got it put away for the season on the hard. You still want to be able to monitor your batteries. It'd be nice to have. You can do that, and those are not too expensive these days. You can get the battery monitoring systems that will hook into Wi-Fi, and then you can log in through a portal and see everything you can do. So sticking with the electrical, that'd be like LED lighting. I mean, number one, LED lighting is so cheap these days, and it uses so much less power. If you've got the old style incandescent light bulbs, even those little tiny ones burn 50 watts, right? Whereas the same style LED might burn 5 watts, right? And with the LEDs, you can easily change from red to white or whatever color you want. You want to have some party lights, some disco lights, do that, great. But if you're sailing at night and you want to keep your night vision, you can just hit a switch on your app on your phone for the LEDs and change it to red. And so that would be another easy way to keep more electrical power. And then your next big thing, not related to electrical, but still in the section 1, it's very important to have, is your anchor and your ground tackle. You want to have, I would say, depending on where you're going to go cruise. If you're just going to go cruising in the Bahamas, you can get away with having like 50 meters of chain. That's about 160 feet of chain. You're almost never going to put out more than that. So chain is chain, obviously, and then rode is rope attached to the chain that's attached to the boat. Chain is better. Number one, it weighs more and it stays down on the bottom of the water, so it pulls more horizontally rather than a rope that kind of floats a little higher. And then a properly sized anchor. I mean, almost everybody, you look it up, there's charts that'll tell you, okay, you got a 40-foot boat that weighs this much, you need a 50-pound anchor. Go one size bigger if you can. Just always do that. I've always used Mantis Marine. They're pretty good depending on what you can do. You can do the M1 or the M2. The M1 has kind of like a self-righting technology. Technically the M2 does, but it's not as good because it doesn't have a roll bar, but it still works better. So ground anchor, and then you need to have a standby anchor in case you have to cut that one loose, something like that, because you never know when you're going to be in a big storm and you need to rely on your anchor and not drag, because that will mess up your boat quick in a quick way. So, and then the one more thing under this first section, which is definitely worth it upgrades, would be your refrigeration. If you've got an older boat, likely your refrigeration is not very efficient. It's worth investing in the newer systems that, number one, they're a lot more efficient electrical wise, and they do a better job of cooling. Your older boats tend to have kind of built into the cabinets and all that, like a big, deep, really well insulated thing. So those are pretty easy to do. You can always put in like another drop in. They sell the kits where you can do it, and it's really easy where you just, everything's already preloaded with Freon. You just hook it up to your electrical system, hook it up inside the refrigerator, mount it in. You got the little cold plates that cool everything off, and then you just connect your Freon lines and you should be good to go. They're pretty simple these days. They're expensive for something like that. It's like $1,500 for that. Or what you can do, what a lot of people will do, is it's even cheaper, and they're probably more efficient wise because they just have the newer technology in them, is they have Engel is a pretty name brand. That's like the higher end brand, but you can get the cheaper stuff that maybe works nearly as well. Is like the portable refrigerators that you can plug into either 110 or 12 volt. They're meant to go in your vehicle, right? You can put them in the back of your SUV and plug it into the cigarette lighter. They're not cigarette lighters, your 12 volt outlet. I mean, nobody calls them, whatever. I guess I don't know what generation you call them cigarette lighters, one you call them 12 volt, but you can do all that. And so it's just a good way to upgrade your refrigeration, save power. If you haven't noticed, electricity and power is very important on a boat. It makes your headache so much less, having good electrical systems and all that. All right, so now the next section would be nice to have upgrades, but you don't necessarily have to have. This next one, it's kind of on a borderline for me. I'd almost want to put it in section 1, but it's in section 2, and that would be an autopilot. And I definitely say it's got to be in section 1 if you are solo sailing. If you're solo sailing, 100%, that autopilot needs to be in section 1. If you're not solo sailing, say you have a crew member and a significant other, you can get away with not having an autopilot depending on where you're going. If you're going to cross oceans, you must have an autopilot. So that would be back up into section 1. And in fact, if you're going to be crossing oceans, you kind of want to maybe even consider having a backup autopilot. Because if you're out in the middle of the Atlantic crossing over to the Med and you still have 2 weeks to go and your autopilot fails, boy, you want to hand steer that thing for 2 weeks, that's going to be a nightmare. So I would say this is almost definitely in tier 1. But if you're just going to go to the Bahamas, right, your longest sail is going to be, 4 or 5 hours. You're going to cross the Gulf Stream. Sorry, it might be a little longer than that. You're going to cross the Gulf Stream, 50 miles. So you might do 8 or 9 hours. That would be, but that's doable for one day. The rest of the time, once you get to the Bahamas, you're not going more than about 20, 30 miles in one time. Most of the time, you're only doing 5 or 10 miles. So it's easy to hand steer and do all that. Now, your other instruments, I don't think are as important. I may even put those in section 3. So your chart plotters and things like that. I would even put a lot of those in section 3. I'll kind of get to section 3. But the reason I would do that is because your phone, right? Your phone is such a good tool these days for navigation and charts and all that that you don't need to spend $3,000 installing a new chart plotter in your boat when you've got a really nice chart plotter in your pocket. Maybe even just get an iPad instead. So instruments wise, I would definitely put that in section 3. Section 2, another one that would be nice to have for cruising, it just makes things so much easier, is a water maker, water desalinator. I've always used Rain Man. They are putting more automated type controls where they have like this push button stuff where it does it all automatically, but they're a lot less expensive than some of your higher end products where it does it automatically, where you hit a button and it does it all for you. A lot of the Rain Man stuff, you actually have to turn dials and pressure and all that. You do it yourself, but it's going to save you a lot of money. Instead of spending $12,000 on a water maker, you can spend $4,000 or $5,000 and get a water maker that'll do the same thing. Yeah, you actually have to manually operate it, but whatever. It's a little bit easier. Section 2, again, I would say air conditioning. Well, it really depends. If you're going to be in the tropics, it's a must-have. Definitely section 2. If you're going to be down in the Caribbean during the summer or wherever it's hot, boy, you're just going to bake in there. That means you might need to run your generator if you have one, or definitely if you're going to be in a marina. If it's 80 degrees and you're on the hook and there's a decent breeze, it's probably going to be fine in your boat. It's not going to be too hot. But if you're at a marina and it's 80 degrees and you're not bow into the wind, so you're not getting the wind coming in through the hatches and all that, it's going to be so hot in that boat. So you definitely need air conditioning for that. Now, if you're just going to be in the Bahamas, say November through April, you don't need air conditioning. If you're just doing it seasonally like that, you really don't need air conditioning. But if you're going to be there in the summer, you definitely need it. So it would, definitely need air conditioning. I like being comfortable. Section 3, stuff that's probably not worth it unless you just really want to spend the extra money. That'd be things like electric winches. It is nice to have electric winches. It makes it so much easier to do stuff. You just hit a button and your winches work. But, how often are you actually sailing? When you're out cruising around in a sailboat, you're only sailing maybe half the time, and you're not sitting there, you're not racing, so you're not like tacking a lot and all that. You pull the sails up one time and you let them sit there all day, and you get to where you're going, you pull the sails down. So you might have to winch on something for 20 minutes and then you're done for the day. Or you can get like a nice, so if you've seen Sailing Doodles where I'm on the CT56, I've got that Milwaukee right angle drill with a chuck on it that'll run my winches. So that's like $300 for that, and it'll do all your winches and makes things a lot easier. So that's what I would recommend if you're going to do something like that. And that goes with section 3, in-mast furling and all that stuff. It is nice to have, but I wouldn't spend the money on it unless you just have the money to burn. I mean, it's not something that I would go out of my way to spend a lot of money on. Over the top electronic suites and all that, you don't need all that stuff. Barely used gadgets, that'd be underwater lights and things like that. It's nice to have. It looks pretty. It looks cool. It's fun for having a party or whatever. But it's not something that you have to go cruising. That being said, on a boat, you're always going to need something. You're always going to need to work on something. Definitely things you need to have is lots of spares. So spare water pumps, spare impellers, spare filters, spare, oil, anything you can think of that you might need to replace regularly. You need to keep spares on board. Belts, all those things. So definitely have that. That's one of the things you should spend the extra money on, because the problem is if you're out there in the Bahamas and you realize, I need a new impeller for my motor, and you don't have one, well, now you're going to be stuck at least a week or so while you're waiting to get that part in. And then it's going to cost you 3 times as much, because now you got to pay the import duty and the shipping and all that. So it's definitely, have that on hand before you go cruising. So to recap, buy smart, upgrade wisely. Get the boat with it's already done if you can. It's gonna, so you don't take that depreciation hit. And there you go. So speaking of depreciation hit, you can win my CT56. Doing a prize giveaway on it. The drawing is January 31st. Right now, if you buy 10 tickets, you can get 30 free tickets. There is no purchase necessary. You can register and create an account on the website, and you get a free entry. and then see the website for details, and void where prohibited. So if you want to win that boat, it's already got a lot of spares. That boat's already set up. It has everything I've already talked about except for the electric winches, but I do have the Milwaukee drill for it. So, all right, so what did I miss? Leave me a comment down below. What items do you think I needed to add to this list? And what topics would you like to see in a future podcast? So thank you guys for tuning in. Please click that like and subscribe button, and we'll see you on the next podcast.